All right. Hello out there in Ring Central land. Can everybody hear me? If I can get one nice person to say in the chat. A couple nice people. Look at that. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our official opening keynote for Higher Ed Dreamin' 24. Can I get a whoop whoop? Oh, you all said it with me. It's so nice. If you can't tell, we're super excited to have you guys here with us today. We have a jam-packed agenda, so I want to give you an idea of what this session is going to look like, and then I'm going to quickly hand it over to our real reason why you're here, both Carries, who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But while we're here in the keynote, you're going to start by hearing a little bit of an introduction from Carrie Otto, who is one of our Higher Ed Dream and Planning team members and on the Higher Ed Advisory Council. We're then going to hand it over to Carrie Marcinkevage, aka Dr. CRM, who's going to tell us a little bit more about her topic. We'll have time for some Q&A at the end. So just noting, as you're hearing from Carrie, if you're in the session chat, you want to make sure that you're under session on the right-hand side, and then that you're either chatting, which we won't be able to take questions from just because there will be a lot of activity. I already know you guys. But if you do want to ask an official question, you'll do that through the Q&A feature, which is just a little bit further over. We will have at least one poll that gets done today, so we'll make sure that you can see that when we are ready to do that. So just make sure you're in the session chat or the session Q&A and you should be all set. At the very end today, I'm going to give you probably the fastest tour of the platform possible, just so that you feel really comfortable before you go into the various sessions and booths that you're going to be in today. Without further ado, I'm going to welcome onto the stage Carrie Otto from the University of Minnesota. Carrie!
Right. Hi, everybody.
Are you so excited right now?
I'm so excited. Thanks for bringing
Is it weird
me
to
up
hug
here.
you? No.
Never
It's never weird.
Never weird to hug you.
So you're going to hang out with another Carrie. You're going to be like a Carrie sandwich up here. You ready?
Ready. Let's
All
do
right.
it.
I'm going to hand over to you.
All right.
Here we go,
Welcome,
guys.
everybody, to our third annual Higher Ed Dreamin' event, where we are a higher ed-led volunteer body, and our main goal has always been to bring you content for the higher ed community by the higher ed community. And we are coming to you live today from the OWN Studios in New Jersey. Super excited to be here. And before we get started with our keynote, I want to just do a couple of thank yous to a number of people. I'll start with our Higher Ed Advisory Council members. Our Salesforce Higher Ed Advisory Council is full of wonderful people from around the country, from different institutions that have volunteered their time to do a number of things for the community, but also to help us support this event. So thank you to the council. I also want to thank all of our presenters today. We are very excited to have a lot of content for you, and we couldn't do it without all of the hard work they put together in sharing their stories with you. Thank you also to our wonderful sponsors. We could not put on this event without you. We really appreciate your dedication and help of our community. I also want to thank my colleagues that are always inspiring me every day in our planning team, Haley Gould, Frank Montoya, and Florence Brody, and to our tech support today, Brian Krasinski. And then also I want to make sure that we thank all of you. We have over 900 registrants today, and we're so excited to share all this content with you. So thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us today. So without further ado, I want to introduce our keynote speaker today. We have lovingly, unofficially dubbed her as Dr. CRM. And she's also the 2024 Salesforce Education Community Champion Award recipient. But I think one of my favorite things about her is that we share the same name. That's right. Her name is also Carrie. And I am just proud and honored to be able to introduce another Carrie, Miss Carrie Marcinkevage. And I want to tell you a little bit about her. She works at Penn State University as the Enterprise CRM Strategy and Architecture Director, excuse me. She also conducts academic research on CRM strategy, and her current focus in her research is generative AI in higher education CRM. I cannot wait to see that research and what she comes up with in that with her colleagues. But before we dive into her insights on uniting teams in CRM, I want to have a little fun with you. We have asked Carrie to play a little game with us. It's 2 truths and a lie. And we're getting a poll out there right now for you to respond. If you, I believe, click on the poll tab. Are we live on it? There it is. All right. read the 2 truths and a lie and tell me which one is the lie about Carrie. And while you're doing that, I am going to call up Dr. Carrie Marcinkevage. Hi, Carrie.
Hello.
Thanks for joining me.
You bet. Thank you.
It's so good to see you and
You
be here
too.
with you in person. And let's see, do we have some results coming in? It's hard to squint through the lights here and see everything.
I can get it here if we
All
want to see
right.
it.
Well, why don't you tell us, Carrie, as people are responding. Let's see what we've got here. People vote. Oh, there you go.
Uh-huh.
There we go. All right. Time's up. We're making this quick. So, Carrie, tell us what were the 2 truths and the lie.
I did finish my PhD at 50, and I did recently play the role that Ingrid Bergman played. Did you know that Casablanca was based on a play? It's called Everybody Comes to Rick's. I did not know that. So I did do that. And I did take up horseback riding, but jumping, are you kidding? How old am I? No. Doing dressage, it's been amazing, but no jumping.
Okay, so somewhat of some truth to all of them, but the one about the horse jumping was the lie. All right. Well, thank you so much, Carrie. Before I turn it over to you to do your keynote, I just want to remind everybody that we will leave some time at the end for Q&A. So remember, if you're in the session tab of the platform and then go over to Q&A, you can post questions there. You can also upvote questions, and we will help get some of those answered at the end. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Carrie.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie. All right, so hello, everybody. Let me tell you what we're going to do today. We're going to give you the lay of land. I'm going to do some boundary busting. But first, we're going to start by talking about individual identity. So we're going to talk about that first, individual identity, and we're going to understand how that works so that we can move up to talking about group identity. And group identity, of course, leads into our organizations and the boundaries that group identity tends to create, and how CRM can help us address that and how we work with it within CRM. So at first, when we're talking about individual identity stuff, if you're asking, how on earth does this relate to CRM? I promise we will get there. Just go with me on it, okay? All right, so here's my first question for you. If you could write some of these down in the chat, just for fun, that would be great. So first, what's your favorite candy bar? We just had Halloween, so perhaps you have a stack and bag of candy laying around till next Halloween, like at our house. So go ahead and enter some of that in the chat, see if we've got those going. And then, what is the mnemonic for the colors of the rainbow? Right, some answers coming in. Oh, 1,000 grand. Wow, that's a rough one. Did anybody write Clark bar? I don't know, because that was a favorite. If you're from Pittsburgh, you know Clark bars. And there's Roy G. Biv, right? Roy G. Biv would be the colors of the rainbow. And now, I don't mean to be divisive here. I don't want to start a fight, but is a hot dog a sandwich? Yes, no? Fight amongst yourselves in the chat. No, yes, no, it's not. It's barely food is a response I think I've heard before. Yep. Right? Perfect. Twix, I'm ambidextrous. That's fantastic. Right? So why is this important? Right? Everybody has opinions on these. Look at them coming in, right? We're thinking about it. Is a hoagie a sandwich? Same question. Has a different name. Well, here's why that's important. Human nature. We tend to try to do these 4 things, right? We like to simplify things. We like to break it down. We like to give things name. This is a sandwich. We like to categorize things, right? It fits in these boxes. You might organize your closet by color or your books by colored spine, and it's very, very lovely. We like to order things. This is my first favorite. This is my second favorite. This is my third favorite, right? We do this to nearly everything. And that's just how we make sense of the world, right? Makes a lot of sense. Now, the interesting thing about this is how that affects how we think about ourselves. So if you apply that to our own identities, how we think about ourselves, right? We tend to think about ourselves in these ways too. We use things to name what we're like. We categorize things. We talk about favorites. We talk about how things apply to us and how they don't. Now, the interesting thing about this, though, if you look at the research, is that identity tends to be less about specific characteristics and attributes. So I'm a redhead with glasses, right? Those are attributes, but they don't tell myself or you very much about me, right? To say I'm a redhead with glasses doesn't tell me a whole lot about myself. So it's less about the characteristics and attributes, but what we found is it tends to be more about these tensions among areas where we're classifying and organizing. And we tend to kind of flow between them, negotiating these tensions. So let me give you a couple of examples. I mentioned, right, I'm not jumping, but I'm doing dressage, and I only started that a couple of years ago. I can't tell you how long it has taken me, and I'm still not quite comfortable calling myself an equestrian, right? That feels like a very big name. It's a very big term. And to call myself an equestrian, I'm expanding my sense of self, right? Elasticity, that equestrian, not equestrian, kind of working that boundary. Another one would be, am I a cat or a dog person if I have both, right? It's a head scratcher. That's a way to think of myself. And another one would be, so I had a terrible trip to the Outer Banks, really wasn't great. And I decided at that moment that I am not a beach person, I am a lake person. Until I go to Hawaii next year with our family, and then I might be a beach person. So then I guess I'm a water person? I don't know. So, right, so all of these things, we try to expand and contract our sense of self as we encounter new things, and we try to make sense of them. Yes, I will take this into my identity. No hard line, this is not part of my identity. So you see what I mean about identity, elasticity, and these boundaries that we create around ourselves and how they get thinner or thicker, and who we are and who we're not. So that's the individual identity part. Think about then how that applies to groups. Organizational boundaries. We're all part of different groups within our organizations. And what you start to see is you've got departments, you've got units, you've got groups, and some of them have thinner or thicker boundaries around them. In higher ed, we tend to be pretty collaborative externally, right? Lots of sharing, as Frank said in the pre-show. We talk to each other a lot. We're super helpful. Inside the organization, sometimes that's the same thing, and sometimes that's a bit of a different story. We saw this as we started to go through our CRM projects, and in the research around it, started to see that there were pockets of organizational groups and units, and they had different kind of thicknesses, different levels of boundaries among them. So how do we deal with it, right? If we think of the thick boundaries, part of the challenge is that means in CRM land, there's risk introduced because we're not getting information out. Thick boundaries tend to keep everything inside. It's hard to work across units. And in the essence of CRM, which is about trying to give the best experience to our constituents out there, it doesn't work well. So a lot of us are here saying, how can I break down some of these boundaries? They're not good for us, and they're not good for our constituents. So what do we do? So here's the cool part. That's where we've got opportunities to help break down those boundaries. So in the research, they're called spanners and objects, which is not really fun language, but right, it's the people and the things that we can use. So think about the people you know who are really good at crossing boundaries. They were the ones in high school who belonged to and could cross all the social groups, right? They're the ones today that Malcolm Gladwell might call the connectors. They're the ones who can talk to and know people in all different departments. Formal roles, informal roles, pretty fluid. So we can utilize the people. And then the other part is there are objects, there are things, processes, technologies, even symbols and things that we can use to help move those boundary tensions toward the better for our constituents. So if you combine those, you've got boundary clusters. And this is what brings us to CRM. So Gonzo is helping us break down the walls here. CRM is kind of an amazing thing because CRM is all about breaking down boundaries. It's one of the technologies where, I don't know about you, if you're struggling with integrations with basically everything, it's because CRM is trying to bring together everything about our constituents. That by its nature means how can we reduce boundaries? That's what it's all about. And it was really, really amazing when we were doing the research on CRM. I was studying critical success factors. And organizational boundaries hadn't really come up exactly as something I intended to study. But what wound up happening is all the data everybody was talking about at the beginning and then throughout about an 18-month project, it was talking about these boundaries, these silos. And what I saw was what it looked like at the beginning and then what it looked like at the end. And it was absolutely amazing. The story just had to be told. So here's what I found. Over the course of this project, and then in subsequent research and projects that we're involved in right now, we saw 4 areas that were really the primary boundary tensions that CRM was engaged with and could help address. So specifically, what we did was we studied an action research project around implementation of CRM at the organizational level for the business school. And the Smeal College of Business has about 10,000 students, so it's pretty big overall. And that was kind of the first area of study. And looking at that, all the things that people talked about were, how did information flow, right? That's our first one. How did information flow back and forth? And we started to see at the beginning of the project, there were lots of places where nobody shared information. It was very protective and very closed, right? You have a lot of that. Well, your data's, it's a wonderful life, right? Well, your data's in Tom's house and your data's in here, and no one would share. And then as we went through the project, there were some things that happened that really started to open up, and we started to see more open information sharing and information flow. Talk a little more about these specifics in a minute. The performance environment was the second one. Was it very competitive or was it very collaborative? And the more competitive it was, right, the greater those boundaries were. So this is where we had non-credit kinds of opportunities where people were literally competing for students. So that was an area where you can see that the more competitive it is, the thicker those boundaries are. The third one is trust level, low versus high. So how much do units trust one another with their data, with the process, and of course, right, you see how this affects the first one. If people don't trust, they're not going to share information, right? So you see how they work together. And then the last one is kindredness. We struggled for a word to describe this, but it's how much any given group feels like it is the same or different from another group, right? And our big example for this was one group was in the room, we were talking about strategy, and they said, well, you know, we work with companies, so we are unlike anyone else at the table because we work primarily with companies. And I mean, I knew these groups, I knew what they did. And I said, okay, I want you to raise your hand if your group works with companies. Does anybody else here work with companies? And over half the room had some form of operations that worked with companies. Career services, obviously, they have employer relations. They work with companies. Our research centers, it's not just student, but they have to reach out to companies and they're doing work with their students, with their companies. So it was a bit of a surprise to find out that people were actually more like one another in terms of what they did than they were not. So these have been particularly interesting because we're doing 2 big projects right now, and to see how these work within our existing projects. One project is a big implementation, moving our development system from an old system into Salesforce. And the other is a system for learners that is moving our World Campus and our graduate school into Education Cloud from Talisma Campus Nexus for the World Campus, and then the graduate school had homegrown. So they're moving in together. So the trust levels, the more that they were able to be seeing that they were alike than different, that was really important. When the World Campus and grad school did their requirements, we were all actually surprised to find that 70% of their requirements were actually the same. There was a 30% difference, but 70% was the same. And that was really good for everybody to see, but that really helped that sense of kindredness, right? It moved us toward that same level, toward lower boundaries. So if these are the boundary tensions, right, and we can bring to bear people and things, spanners and objects, in order to do something about it, what are the big things we can do? So let me give you my top 3. They're the top 3 because for me, they really kind of hit all of them. So this is the crux, right? So what do we do? So here are some things that I have seen that have worked. And what I would love to do is get more ideas of these into the chat, because we would love to build this up, right? What are the other things that we can do to reduce those boundaries? So the first one is the strategic planning process. So when we did our strategic planning for the big enterprise work that we were undertaking, we said, to our consultants, right? We said, normally we expect that you're going to come in and you're going to do stakeholder interviews, and then you're going to write it up and give it to us. Thanks. So we said we don't want to do it that way. And the reason we don't want to do it that way is because what you'll do is you'll get every individual group or a couple of people into a room, and they'll tell you their stuff. And they will not get to hear the benefit of everybody else's stuff. They will not be sharing information. They will not be building trust, and they will not be building kindredness, right? So we want to do this all together and workshop it. It was kind of grueling, and it was a 14-week process, but it was amazing to be able to see everybody come together and to share across the organization all of those things. This is the one for which Penn State actually won the Dave Perry Innovation Award for it. And it was so special because you could see those boundaries thinning throughout that project. You could watch it happen. You could see it happening. It was really cool. So that would be one suggestion, is do your planning together rather than those individual groups. Another one would be in your metrics. Every single group has individual metrics, right? And so you're always looking for what are those individual metrics for every capability set, every use case. And sometimes we didn't always kind of take those up a level to make sure everybody together was talking about what are the things we're all trying to do together. What are our bigger metrics? And with those metrics, number C there, a lot of the metrics tend to be what in the research is called exploitive metrics. It's not a fantastic language for it, but it's basically saying, how can I get the most out of this short term? So it's a rise or a decrease in a particular metric. But then there are also the concepts of explore opportunities, and those are the ones that are more about innovation and growth. And let me give you an example of how I don't think we did this great at the business school when we did that initial project. What was good about this is in every single meeting that we had in the business school, we had our big picture goals in front of everybody. So the good thing here is that everybody was seeing everybody else's goals too, but just the high level 4 things we were after. But if you look at those, the first 3, they're all about increase a particular metric right now. So those are kind of in the exploit perspective, and we probably could have had both maybe, right? We could have done a little better with that. The last one I would say was a little more in the explore. What could it look like to be this, right? So that was a little more expansive. So I think we could have done a little bit better here, but you see what I mean about the goals. And we had these, like I said, in front of all of the groups all of the times. And then the last one would be in simply how you do your planning, what kind of an approach you take. And a strengths-based approach tends to be really good for this, because I don't know about you, but it's easy for IT to kind of drop into what's the bad stuff and let's fix it, as opposed to what do we want to be great at. So here are 2 methods, and there are resources at the back of this that talk about what are the really good things that you can do from a strengths-based perspective. So SOAR is strengths, opportunities, aspirations, results, instead of SWOT, where we tend to focus so much more on the weaknesses and threats than we do the opportunities and the strengths. So strengths and opportunities, assets and aspirations, and the other one, they both start with, what are we great at? Is there anything we can do with that? And where do we want to go? That, again, if you think about what that does related to organizational boundaries, those are the things that gets everybody sharing information. It raises trust, gets everybody excited. It's a more innovative mindset. And that's the way you really want to go into these and get everybody together around it. So that's the first one. It's really about your planning. And this could be overall enterprise or individual projects. Second one, I just called it cross-functional everything. So DevOps, right? Making sure you make it easy for everybody to play together in the playgrounds. That's a very tactical one. And then cross-functional groups for every level that you have. So the business school example for this, there's a lot on here, but the main point is we had standing groups and temporary groups. Our standing groups, we had steering and operations, and those were always cross-functional, where we talked about everything regardless of what department it came under. And again, that was really trying to help everybody with kindredness, help everybody feel like they were more the same than different, and help everybody understand the high-level metrics, information sharing, trust, right? So you can see how it works again on those organizational boundaries. And then our temporary groups, every semester we would have a cross-functional group to come together to solve some kind of problem, some issue. And those were always cross-functional. They were always together, and they were always collectively coming up with what the solution would be. Even if it only affected one area or one more than another, they were still always cross-functional to do that. So the last one that I would offer is what I'll call the secret barrier busters. And the first one here, attend and befriend. If you have ever had a non-stressful CRM project, I would love to talk to you, because I'm not sure I believe that's possible. They tend to be, at least at some time or many times during the projects, there's stress, right? And under stress, we can either kind of remove ourselves, depart, isolate, or we can help each other out. So tending and befriending is human behavior that helps build bonds. And if you hear build bonds, you also hear reduce boundaries. So to the extent that you can operationalize the tend and befriend kind of thing under times of stress, that's another great opportunity to utilize it, right? That's a secret barrier buster. And the last one, this is my accidental favorite. Didn't realize that it actually had a name as a boundary object, right? I didn't realize it was a thing, but it was basically symbols and mascots. So let me give you the two fun examples. In the business school, we started with Salesforce kind of at the business school level. We were supposed to in maybe 2011, 2012, but it only made it out to one or two departments. And so everybody was hearing about Salesforce, but they'd never actually seen it. And they started calling it the Great Unicorn because they heard it had healing magical powers, but they'd never actually seen it. So when we rebooted a few years later, we said, all right, we know you've heard about the unicorn. And I know we can't give you the unicorn on the left there, the magical unicorn, but we promise we're at least going to start and give you this. And that is a beautiful stick figure unicorn, I think. And so that's what we were after. We said, we will give you the unicorn. And that is how I have about 130 unicorns in my office now that were gifted over time. And the unicorn was something we could laugh over, we could joke over. It served a bit of a tend and befriend kind of a purpose. And it was a boundary spanner because everybody joked about the unicorn and talked about it together. And here's the other one. And if this doesn't directly talk about boundary busting, I don't know what does. So for these enterprise projects, right, we said, okay, When do you think Central IT, the graduate school, and our world campus would ever collaborate on a shared system? I mean, come on. And you know what my answer would have been 5 years ago? Anybody? I can't see the chat, but when will that happen? It does not involve a 4-letter word. It does not. When pigs fly. That's what I said. Yes, when pigs fly is when that will happen. So my unofficial mascot for the project that we have right now, guess what we're doing? We are, in fact, having those units collaborate all together on Salesforce. It's kind of amazing. And I think this is a pretty cool mascot. It is not the Nittany Lion, but this is a way to think about it. But here's another example, right? It's funny. We can joke about it. And it literally is all about boundary busting. So that's a couple of examples there of collaboration and strengths-based planning, cross-functional everything, and barrier busting. Let me give you one word of caution. Collaboration overload, right? So if you try too hard at this, you get a little bit of the burnout and okay, that's enough collaboration, thank you very much. It's like how every professor made you do a group project and you're going, and that was because you needed to learn how to work as a group. And you went, okay, I really don't need to learn, I get it, right? So that's one to be careful of. And the other one to be careful of is the more team cohesion that you have within a particular group, you can accidentally create boundaries just at a different level. So I have to admit, we didn't intend it, but this is actually what happened in the project with the business school. So we got really good at reducing the internal boundaries, and we accidentally created so much group identity around the business school that we created a boundary between the business school and the university. Or I don't think we created it. That's taking far too much credit. We certainly thickened it, though. We made a greater barrier. We did not mean to do that, but it's just kind of what happened given the cohesion in the project. So that is just something to be careful of, to watch out for. Just want to make sure that that was something we found. Thought I'd mention that. All right, so key points, right? Here are the key points from today. So we talked about individual identity and the boundary tensions, right? And it's not attributes, but it's elasticity among them. And that organizations have that too. And we want to expand the boundary tensions across those groups. And strong ones in higher education do a disservice to constituent relationships. So we can use people and things to help us cross those boundaries. CRM is a great opportunity, and it's kind of built for boundary busting. And then if you look at those tensions, think about ways across those particular tensions that you can use those in CRM to move those boundaries and shift them positively. So those are key points. Just wanted to wrap with that and to offer you some resources. So there are little pieces here from the end notes of things that I used. So feel free to go ahead and look those up. And there's a survey that I had done around those boundary tensions if you ever want to take a look at your own organization. So there's a sample there. And my request, as Carrie said, we're doing a study. A colleague, Dr. Akil Kumar from the business school, and I are doing a study on generative AI and the opportunities for it in higher education CRM. So there's QR code and a link here. We would absolutely love it if you are engaged in CRM right now. So if you're doing it, if you're piloting it, we would love to hear from you about your experience. So thank you. Questions?
Carrie, that was really incredible. I want to go spend an hour in a room with you to understand all these things even more. It was really, really cool. We have a lot of great questions for you. The first one today is Meredith would like to know a little bit more about your observations on the context of leadership in boundary tension creation and mediation.
Got it. What was interesting is if you think about the leaders at what level, right? So our executive leaders were the first group that we had to really align around everything that we were doing. So at the business school, that was our steering committee, and that would have been deans and directors of different units. And at the university, for our enterprise work, that is vice presidents and deans and the provost and aligning them. And what's interesting about the enterprise program is that our leaders have changed over time, right? And that has been a challenge. We feel like we need to go on a re-election campaign, right? Of how are we going to readdress this? And the really, really important work that we did in strategic planning, the things that broke down those barriers and that got everybody in a collective understanding, those broke down because we didn't have the same people and they were not involved at the start. So being able to do it together, to do that alignment together, and then if you have changes in leadership, we're working, right? I would love to be able to do it again with those individuals and really have that collective understanding of what you're trying to do, which helps everybody with alignment instantly. So that alignment around the overall goals and where you're trying to go, and to go through that little strategic process with them, that's so important, because then they do with one of the critical success factors, which is leadership from executives. They support it, they talk about it, they give you what you need. So that's
I'm
that's
on
what
that
I would
same
say.
realignment journey with leadership right now. So I feel that real hard. All right. Jonathan would like to know, how do you see the role of chat collaboration platforms as a connecting technology? And is there a cause for concern when processes move there and out of the CRM?
Ooh, I would be interested in which, like, chatbot kind of thing, which, by the way, in the generative AI space, agents and chatbots are the single biggest place that we're hearing Gen AI being used across there. But when you say out of the CRM, looking for,
Well, maybe we'll, there, Slack or Teams was the context, Jonathan said.
so you're talking about, well, it would depend, right? If you've got people talking about the work, actually, that could be a benefit. You could use that in terms of organizational boundaries, because that might be better than if they're just looking at the system and interacting independently with it, right? So that collaboration and that conversation could be good no matter where it's happening. From a data standpoint, right, making sure that you have things being collected back where it needs to be. Now that part, yes, I could see being absolutely really important. And that would be part of that information tension, right? Where if you have maybe increased trust by taking it outside and you're at least having conversation, but you're getting more to information that's closed side of that tension if you've taken it out and nobody else can see it. So both would need to be true in order to really reduce boundaries.
Great answer. All right. Lucy would like to know, what process do you use to identify and select standing group members and temporary group members?
Oh yeah, that one's for us was definitely, did they have expertise in a particular business process, right? What was the business process? I would add the selection of the business process or what you're going to work on. That was equally important. We started that whole kind of, here's how we're going to do this, with something easy where we knew we could have quick wins, right? So if you're going to set up something new like that, where it's this cross-functional project process, maybe do it with something easy first and then pull in the next one. And what we did that worked well was we included one or two people who'd been on the first one, so that they could bring the lessons learned and kind of teach in the second one. But who knows the process and who is willing and able. So some of those boundary spanner people, having one or two of those people in there to seed it and to set the culture can be really important. So first, starting off, it's partially about the work and partially about who the people are in terms of their fluidity of groups.
Thank you so much. All right. Do we have time for one more, or do we need to get wrapped up? Okay. So for any of the questions that remain in the chat, maybe we can ask Carrie to give us a little typed up answer, and we can send that out in some way. And we also are recording this. So thank you so much, Carrie. This was really, really great, really informative. The engagement was really high in the chat. So thank you so much. And we are going to turn it over to Haley to give a couple of announcements before we move to the next session. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Can everybody give a big round of applause for both Carries? Thank you, studio audience. I need the like track, or the laugh track would be nice too. All right, I am hoping you guys can see my screen as I'm going through. Looking good. Florence, I'm clapping at home. I'm just picturing so much clapping. Amazing. I know I left that session going like, I'm gonna need to watch that again. And also I'd like my boss and everyone that exists in my universe to watch that session. So thank you, Carrie. All right. My job at the end here is to just give you a quick show and tell around the platform. Although we've already found a lot of the good stuff, the chat, the Q&A, that's going to be very similar as you go through the platform today, whether you're in a booth visiting some of our sponsors, hi sponsors, giving you a shout out in just a second, or if you're in a session where you're listening to one of our amazing speakers. So I'm just going to give you a quick show around the platform, but I want to caution you that as I do this, give me one sec, got to have my slides up as well. Just a minute. Here we go. Awkward singing. Of course, I don't have my slides up. Give me 1 second, everybody. This one. Okay. I just want to caution you that it's very, very easy to leave this session. So as I am telling you the next minute or so here, do not click on the things I'm about to show you. I have a screenshot of what your screen looks like. I don't want to lose you into the ring central vortex, okay? So everybody agree with me. I'm not going to click on the next thing Haley talks about. I'm not going to click on the next thing I talks about. Okay. All right, so please don't click on these right now, but as you notice on the left-hand side of your screen today, you've got a couple of links along the along the left-hand side panel. Those are going to take you out and help you navigate around sessions or the expo where our vendor and our sponsors are just waiting to talk with you. So both of those things will take you out of the current session you're in. So again, do not click on them right now, but feel free to go explore in the next few minutes as we get ready for our next session. So just kind of pointing out, those will help you move around. You can, though, click on these other things as I'm showing you this screen. So you might notice at the very top, just above where I'm standing right here, there's a schedule button kind of in white. That's actually going to overlay your screen. So if you're wondering what's next, it's our first round of presentations. There's going to be a very quick change here in about 5 minutes. You're going to see that schedule is something you can access while in a session, and you won't leave the screen that you're on. Okay. After that, we've already found the important stuff, but just note that when you're in a session or if you're in a booth, you want to make sure that you're using that right-hand side panel. And I'm just gonna highlight right there. You want to make sure that you're in the session or you're in the booth when you're sharing that chat. We are all human beings, so please don't worry if you accidentally post something in the event chat. Just also make sure you post it in the session or the booth. And then just make sure that as you're going into a session, you kind of orient yourself a little bit so you can see those 4 tabs underneath session or booth. So chat, polls, people, and Q&A. We found most of those things today, so we should be doing very, very well. I want to, before we end, we've got another minute or so here. I just want to make sure that I say thank you to all of our sponsors. They all have booths and would love to chat with you at different times throughout the day today. They are going to be on stage with us as well, mostly virtual, but they're going to be on stage with us as well, either for the 5 and 5 interviews, which is like a speed dating type fireside chat amazingness, or the demo jam, which is very, very head-to-head combat style with voting at the end. And I want to make sure everybody knows that you can be entered to win a Salesforce certification voucher. So you can enter multiple ways and you can have multiple entries. So we have a few of these to give out after the event. The way that you are entered to win one of those is you complete our mid-event survey, you complete our post-event survey, you visit an expo booth or all of the expo booths to get multiple entries, or you attend a sponsor roundtable event. So those will all happen throughout the event. If you have any questions on that, please visit us at our Higher Ed Dreamin' booth as well. We have a lot of great content coming up for you today, including just amazing speakers from kind of all over the US. So if you're wondering what institutions are represented here today, you can see that here. Of course, there's many more who are joining us and are going to be contributing in the chat and the Q&A features. You might be wondering what's next. We have about a 5-minute break where we are then going to get set up for our next round of sessions. You'll see both speakers and different coaches on the call, and they'll welcome you once you move there. You are free to move about the cabin now if you would like to. All you need to do is on the left-hand side, click on sessions, and you should be able to find your way there. We'll see you in the next session, everybody. Have a great one.